There. Now it's time for our regular health checkup. And when it comes to medicines, supplements or the latest wellness quick fixes, it can be hard to know what to trust. Here, with some tips on how to shop smarter, infectious diseases paediatrician Dr. Linny Fong joins me in the studio. Good morning to you, Linny. I'm really pleased that we're going to talk about this because every time you pop into a chemist or a health food shop, there's rows and rows and rows of different supplements and different fixes and different, golden promises to fix our health, and I personally get really confused about what I should be taking, what's trusted. This is an industry that's really booming, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, exactly. We know that the health and wellness industry is, worth billions of dollars in Australia, and I think, as you said, like we walk into a pharmacy and it's so hard not to get distracted. You go in there for the cold and flu stuff and you walk out with, a boost concentration formula and, improving your heart health. It's really tricky to know sort of what you're what to trust. And so I think when you're going in, I think the thing to think about, and often something that I try and sort of frame up, and easier said than done always, is, think about why you're actually there and what specific kind of signs and symptoms you are thinking about wanting to treat. What are you trying to fix? Do you actually need something? And then if you think about, yes, you actually do need something, then what product options are available to you?
Well, that's a good point, because it is expensive as well. And as you say, you can walk out of the chemist or the pharmacy going, oh, goodness, how did I just spend $200? So in the aisle, all the boxes look relatively the same, but does anything on the label help us? What should we be looking for? Yeah,
so I think this is really important, and I'm one of those people who likes to read labels and likes to read that fine print. And I think this is where, that education around understanding labels is important. So firstly, read the label. Think about, what the ingredients are that are listed, what dosages are listed, but also for some people, perhaps you haven't noticed that fine print where there's an AUST-L or an AUST-R code. So if you have a look, AUST and then L or R essentially refers to products that have been approved by the Therapeutic Goods Administration and have either been registered or listed. So registered products tend to be ones that have been tested for safety, efficacy, so effectiveness and quality, and they tend to refer to prescription medications, but also some vitamins and supplements. And then there are the listed products which are only tested for safety and quality. Okay. So there is a big difference. And then the other thing that's worth thinking about is products that don't have any AUST, L or R labelling potentially fall under food and food standards Australia and New Zealand, which again, different set of regulations, not as stringent in terms of testing, and their claims tend to be quite different. So they cannot claim for effectiveness in preventing, curing or treating disease. So worth having a look at the fine print. Worth having a look, definitely.
I must admit I've never seen that, so that's something I will look for now. Now, some products make us big promises. Boosting immunity is really, that's a huge one actually. It is a huge one. Especially we're seeing at cold and flu time. Yeah. Or detox. Yes. How much do we need to take with a very big pinch of salt?
Very big pinch of salt. I think, if there's any big claims, I think for me that's always a big red flag. If anything sounds too good to be true, generally it is too good to be true. And again, if it's a product that without those sort of labels, then you need to think about whether or not they are claims that are perhaps not as scientifically proven or rigorous. But yeah, I think the other sort of lesson in this is that just because something's natural doesn't mean that it's not harmful. And we've seen this recently sort of play out in the media with the stuff around B6. So certainly just because it's natural doesn't mean that, in high doses it can't affect and cause problems. And also you need to think about what else is in your diet and what else you are getting in terms of other supplements. So protein drinks, vitamins, supplements, fortified cereals even. So I think, it's worth thinking about all the other additional inputs that you have.
Okay. If someone's watching at home now and you want a really quick checklist for sort of picking a product you can trust, what should you be looking for?
Yeah, so I think there's a few things. So I think firstly, know what you're using it for. So know what your goal is and think about, what symptom you're trying to treat, whether it's kind of general wellness or it's, you're being tired or you're boosting your concentration, for example. I think also think about what the evidence is behind the product and really sort of get in and read the label, understand what you're looking for in terms of ingredients, whether they're brand is credible, whether or not there are realistic claims, and then also think about whether or not it's actually right for you and whether or not you need it. Because, as I said, just because it's a natural product doesn't mean that it's safe, doesn't mean that it doesn't interact with things that you're already taking. Sometimes there's, perhaps an inadvertent duplication of, a supplement that you might be seeing in something else that you're consuming. And then also check in with your pharmacist or GP if you're not sure. Because I think, once you've done your mental checklist and you still can't find the right product, then maybe it's not, firstly, not worth getting.
Yeah.
But then also, if you're taking something and you're not seeing an improvement in terms of your symptoms or signs, then definitely worth seeing a healthcare professional.
That's right. Linny, always wonderful advice from you. Thank you so much for coming this morning. We're going to go back to Nate now, who's joined by a couple of guests in Port Lincoln.